Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the BMF Gauteng induction. My name is Mpho Moseki. I am the chairperson of the BMF Gauteng province. Today, we've decided to do our induction a little bit differently. Last year, we had our induction where it was only me speaking. So this year, we decided as the PEC that we'll have speakers to come and share with you, but not just any speakers. We'll have the speakers that have been in the BMF for quite some time and people who are still active and still have an interest in making sure that the BMF grows. So today we are very privileged to have the Deputy President of the BMF, Mr. Tasneem Fredericks, as well as Bheki Sibiya, past President of the BMF, but he's here in his capacity as the Chairman of the BMFI board. So you would have realized that we did not meet our promise of having induction quarterly as promised last year. Obviously, you all know with the COVID situation, we were unable to then have the quarter one induction, but you are in for a treat today. Are going to have a great time. So our Deputy President is going to be talking to us about the relevance of the BMF, the importance and relevance of the BMF. I think all of us cannot overemphasize the importance of the BMF. Bheki Sibiya will then take us through the BMFI. I think most of you have been in the BMF for quite some time, and you would know that this is one of the very few times and a golden opportunity to for you to learn about the investment arm of the BMF. So with just those introductory words, I'd like to just say welcome and hand over to the Deputy President to take us through her presentation of what the BMF's relevance is in this current dispensation in South Africa. Thank you, DP. We seem to be having some challenges, DP.
Hi, Mpho. Okay, there we go. Super.
Great.
So thank you. So let me just say good evening to all the members and potential members, and also just to acknowledge the presence of our past President, Bheki Sibiya, and also to yourself, Mpho, as the Chair of Gauteng, for extending this important initiative to myself. I started, in the BMF many years ago, and I've served with a lot of stalwarts in the Nelson Mandela Bay region since 2006. And I think for me personally, I've seen a lot of growth around being in the BMF. I often say this to people, that BMF is one of the first boards that many Black professionals serve on. And once you've served on a BMF board, it really it's really a very solid foundation for serving on boards throughout South Africa. I was joking earlier when I was speaking to the colleagues before we started the session. I said, for BMF, you as a board member, having been through a BMF board, you become almost like a tsotsi in the boardroom, because you learn you learn skills that are considered soft skills. It's not theory. It doesn't speak to not observing corporate governance. It speaks to reading the type of skills that you would not be able to learn from textbooks. it's something that you have to go through. And so as Black professionals, when we sit in other boards that are not specifically BMF boards or Black boards, then you already know that the environment is going to be, in a sense, not aggressive, but it's not going to be a friendly terrain. And so you then learn to understand the value of Black collectiveness and the power of having more Black women and having more Black people in the boardroom, because historically we understand that people that are the same will then, will have the same decisions. And so you introduce diversity and you introduce different ways of thinking, because our lived realities are obviously very different. So I think, today I'm going to speak to we've got a slide, but I also just want to speak broadly about the BMF as an organization. For those members who don't know, or for those people who don't know, the BMF was formed in April 1976. And that's, before I was even born. So, I mean, for me, the BMF is more relevant today than it perhaps was earlier on. And I think, when one talks about Black Lives Matter, one thing that the BLM movement has taught us is that it is a global struggle, that the Black struggle is a global one. And I think that the BMF has been very pivotal in terms of speaking to those issues of Black Lives Matter, because, I mean, as an organization, with other Black organizations, we've always put the Black agenda at the front of everything. We understand that, the BMF specifically was set up to establish a majority Black managerial leadership, to ensure that there is a presence in the entire South Africa. And I mean, you'll see when I take you guys through the PowerPoint presentation that the BMF has a footprint in 8 provinces. So our network reaches far and wide, and it comprises mainly young and even a little bit older Black professionals. So that to me is what the BMF is about. I think, Kulu, if you can maybe just go to the slides so that I can take the members through. And I'm going to try and keep it as practical as possible, but also for members that are new, so that they can have an idea from the presentation. So if we can just go to the slide that talks to agenda. Okay. So if you look at the agenda, I've spoken about the BMF in terms of it being such an old organization, formed in April 1976. We're going to cover topics like vision, mission, values. What are the structures within the BMF? What is the strategic plan? What are the programs of the organization? And then I'll just touch on, at the very end, in fact, we've touched on that already, how our makeup is. So if you look at the vision, and I mean, this is just what is the tagline of the BMF, and it's basically to develop managers, particularly Black managers, and we understand why we are developing Black managers. I think as if you look at all the BE legislation, if you look at the preamble, it's all based in trying to, or rather attempting to have this equity after having a system of apartheid for over 30 years. And I think that the legacy of apartheid, I know people don't like hearing that, people blame everything on the legacy of apartheid, but I think it is a reality that the structural inequality runs so deep that I think, generations will pay for the crime of apartheid. It's not just something that after 26 years, we are going to be rid of. It's going to take more than that. I think also we operate in, an environment that still protects and advances the rights of the demographic minority in this country. So I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that the BMF, we are non-racial, by the way. We are apolitical, so our members can be, in fact, when I served in the BMF in the early 2000s, our secretary was a guy called Len Blasey, who was a white guy, and he was our secretary. So it's not to say that the BMF is not for white people. if there are white people who are progressive and they want to serve and they identify with the agenda of the BMF, then we welcome those people to be members of the BMF. And then also, I mean, apolitical in the sense that we don't, we engage with all political parties. I think when you look at the kind of conferences that we have, we'll invite speakers from, the ANC, we'll have speakers from the EFF, we'll have speakers from the Democratic Alliance. We'll have all political parties represented, and that speaks to our membership. We don't say, and in that sense, BMF is a broader church. We look at professionals that are engineers, that are lawyers, that are doctors, that are, whatever profession you can find a home within the BMF. Whatever political party you're in, you can find a home in the BMF. So the BMF is not an exclusionary organization. We're not an elitist organization. We are an organization that is for everyone in South Africa. Now, if you look at the DNA or the core values of the BMF, you look at values such as Ubuntu, creativity, integrity, respect, and effectiveness. So what is a BMF manager then supposed to be? And what is a BMF manager supposed to advocate for? So we talk about being an active member and subscribing to the value of Ubuntu and to the key principles of non-racialism, Afrocentrism, respect for individuals, especially the elderly, and then self-development and own initiative. If we look at the logo of the BMF, you'll notice that the BMF has, Kulu, you're not moving the slides, so I'm just wondering if you can move the slides along, just to go to the logo so that the members can see what the logo looks like. Okay, so you'll see the logo is there's burgundy, there's green, and then there's black. And those colors mean something. The burgundy talks to leadership. The green speaks to growth and development, and the black speaks to the primary focus. Who are the key beneficiaries in the BMF? And we know that those would be the historically disadvantaged people in this country. And then when you look at the design, which by the way we've trademarked, it's a circle, and that talks to inclusivity, what I've just mentioned. If you look at the triangle, it talks to progressiveness. And if you look at the cogs, which is on the black part, that speaks to good work ethic. I had a conversation earlier today with the chair, and we spoke about, she was busy going into a work meeting, and I was talking to her about BMF stuff, and she spoke about Bralot, who is a past president, who said that you need to be excellent in your job to be excellent in the BMF. So whatever you do, must translate into excellence. And to be excellent in the BMF means automatically or by default to mean that you are excellent in your job. And then I think, when we talk to relevance, and when people say, well, why should I be part of this BMF? What can this BMF do for me? I think it's important to understand what the BMF has already done for many Black people, including myself in this country. We look at, Kulu, if you can move on to the next slide, please. We look at the affirmative action blueprint in 1993. The BMF was pivotal in the formation and looking at affirmative action policies. If you look at the Affirmative Action Commission, BMF were one of the first organizations to instigate and to agitate for that. If you look at the Black Economic Empowerment Commission, and I'm really capturing these things because there's a deep history, and I think Bheki Sibiya can also talk to that in terms of how we had seconded and the current president of the country to sit in those commissions. We talk about the reconstitution of the Black Business Council, which happened in 2012, and which originally, if you look at BUSA is called Business Unity South Africa, and it comprised of white business and then the Black Business Council. And when the two joined, it was then called Business Unity South Africa. BMF and many other Black organizations broke away in 2012 and then reconstituted the Black Business Council. And BMF was part of that agitation to have its own clear voice in business. And even though we recognize that we should have a united, we are we are the demographic majority in this country. So strictly speaking, we should have one voice for business, and that is something that BMF should continue through BBC to work on. If you look at the JSE listing requirement, it was through the hard work of the BMF that BE became a requirement in order to list a company on the JSE. And then currently we have a very, very important and most pivotal bill called the Draft Procurement Bill, or the Procurement Bill, which replaces the Triple PFMA Bill, which, you know, we've been criticizing as the BMF for many years, in that it really is exclusionary and anti-black and pro-white business. And in order to compete, you would have had to have had like this 300-year financial cushion to be able to come in with the lowest price, so that you can bid. And a lot of bidding, and a lot of black companies were then outbid, despite the fact that they had level 1 or level 2, for example. So if you look at, you know, the relevance of the BMF, the fact that we have a voice, and that we've always been outspoken in terms of, you know, what is happening within the bigger black collective agenda, both in terms of the women agenda and the economic agenda, because the late Don Kwanazi said that you can't have, or rather, economic or political power plus economic power equals true liberation. So you can't be free if you don't have both political power and economic power. And I think that for many Black South Africans, we remain the economic minority in a sense, because we don't have that strong, you know, economically, we just always left out and left behind. And then I think if we move on to the next slide, you look at what are the value propositions that BMF, you know, can give you. And I think a very important thing for Black professionals is networking opportunities. The fact that BMF, through webinars, through our conferences, through our activities at a branch level, and I know that we are now experiencing COVID-19, and what this pandemic has done is really forced us to enter this fourth industrial revolution, where we can have speakers from anywhere in the world, really, and we can all join in and benefit from that speaker's you know, experience, and draw on that as a BMF. It's strengthened us in a sense. So there's that networking opportunities where you otherwise would not have encountered Bheki Sibiya, for example. I think we're going to go back to a kind of situation where we will be meeting face to face in the future, and then, you know, you can have more personal relations with people, and that's what we've always had. We've created a networking opportunity so that when you do come to a BMF event, you know, we have accomplished speakers, we have people that ordinarily in your social circles you may not have bumped into. And then also, I mean, another value proposition is empowerment. The BMF, and I think Ntati or Bheki Sibiya will talk to how the BMF has, you know, was an empowerment partner in deals. And through that, the BMF as an organization is financially independent. We're one of the few organizations that have an investment arm that was specifically formed to advance our mission and our vision and our agenda, because we've got a whole national office running, where we have you know, coordinators in every province that assists branches and provinces to do the day-to-day work of the BMF. And then there's that brand association, which is quite powerful. I think that when the BMF endorses a position, and when the BMF gets behind, you know, not that we want to be individualizing these things, but when the BMF gets behind important issues and there is a person, there is value in that. We have, whenever there is an event, for example, there'll be the supplementary budget speech, the media will reach out to the BMF and they'll ask, well, what does the BMF say about this, that, and the other? So there's definitely a brand association. And also in the workplace, if you put on your CV that you, as part of your subscriptions, that you're a BMF member, you know, we'd like to think as the BMF leadership that through your engagement and through being a BMF member and having gone through structures and participation and engagement, that would speak to your level of excellence. So that employers will recognize when they see on a CV a BMF member, immediately that is one of the CVs that stands out. And then we also, we do a lot of advocacy and transformation issues. And I'll talk to the litigation fund that's been launched, where we currently have a case against Mango, where they employed, Nico Besaidenout, who did not have the qualifications to be in that position. So there's the advancement of transformation issues through litigation. And then we also do a lot of advocacy work. And we have a full-time researcher that will write papers. So we're able to comment, and we're able to participate in a national conversation from an informed position. And then on skills development, I think that is very important to mention that the BMF Women Empowerment Desk has a partnership with Duke University, where we have nationally, we opened the applications for the program. Duke hosts it. The BMF has other partners who will also contribute. And this year we're rolling it out. In fact, it's just closed, and we're rolling it out electronically. We're going to have online classes because we're obviously now in a situation where we can't meet face to face. And basically what that is a self-mastery course for women. And I have never met a single woman who has been on the course that said to me, it's not been valuable. It's not added to their personal growth. And then we also have, this year we had Gibbs approach BMF. There's a Gibbs partnership where we awarded 5 bursaries to students for doing an MBA at Gibbs University. I mean, the value of that partnership is about, I would say, 1.5 million. So, I mean, this is going to be an annual or biannual thing that we do. As soon as the next class comes in, we'll be able to take. So the value proposition is very wide. But I mean, for me, BMF is an ideological thing. Do you believe in what the BMF wants to advance? Thank you, Kulu. I see Kulu's moved me to YPDP. There's a Young Professionals Development Program. It's also self-mastery. I don't want to say it should be only done by young professionals, because I was a judge on the YPDP program, and it's so engaging and there's so much you can learn. I've even said that all MANCO members should go on that course, and all provincial members should go on that course, and we shouldn't make it like, only for people of a certain age, even though we do push for youth development. I'm just trying to see. So I've already spoken about the BMF Duke partnership. And then the Summit for Leadership Development, we also have a student chapter branch. I was very active in the student chapter branch before I became the deputy president, and I used to engage with the students because, I think that is where my passion lies, because these are our future BMF members. So if we only focus on what can we get today, and what can we give young professionals that are already done with university, then we are going to miss out on people that are coming through the ranks, because that is where our main membership lies. We are looking for graduates that are, that espouse principles of Black excellence. And, we want to produce, today we had a conversation with Ntati Mohali about establishing a BMF academy. And Ntati Mohali was saying to us that the rationale, because he was part of and it's been an ongoing conversation from before his time, but he had specifically during his tenure developed a leadership academy document which spoke to producing Black professionals that we can trust and that are excellent and that can lead us both in the private sector and also in government. And I think that's an important thing to bear in mind when we look at, how we move forward as a country, and how we get past various issues. I've spoken about the litigation fund, and I think it's important for me to note that fund was launched by our president, Andile Nomlala. So it would have been nice for him to talk on that. But what I can say is what I've already said, it's a tool to enforce transformation. I think that a lot of times as Black professionals, we lament and we complain, and we, on a WhatsApp national group, we'll say, but why do corporate South Africa get away with injustices? And then in the same breath, we see that Black professionals who commit certain acts of corruption are then basically taken out. I mean, and I'm not saying that there's a color to corruption, but the narrative has been that corruption is Black. And so when there's a Black professional involved, you sort of see an annihilation of that Black professional. And yet when there's a white person at the helm of corruption, we don't see that same kind of vigor. And I think the litigation fund then becomes a tool, because if you look at, would you ever have a situation where a Black professional or a Black person gets employed with a matric? I mean, you have Black graduates who have to work in menial jobs because they can't get a job in their field. So now imagine heading a company, an SOC, and you only have matric. I mean, you can already see that in itself. It's unfair. And so the BMF, as the BMF, we've said, well, we need to send a clear message, and it can't just be an issue of we're going to issue a statement, because a statement is not as effective as instituting action and demanding answers. And I think it's not even so much about demanding answers, but it's more about holding government accountable. And this doesn't make us anti-government. When government does well, we applaud them, we support them, we engage with them, and we issue a statement in support. And when they don't do well, we must be able to, as active citizens, be able to question them and ask them to account and ask them to be accountable. Just in terms of structures, I think we've spoken to that already. I know there's a map of Gauteng, but I think I have spoken to that one, Kulu, so we can just move past that one. If I can speak about the Women Empowerment Desk in particular. So I chair the Women Empowerment Desk. And basically, I think that, and I was at several, or at least one engagement where the president of the country spoke about triple oppression and the fact that Black women will and they'll experience triple oppression in the sense that we get oppressed because of the basis of our color, because we're Black, and then we also get oppressed because of our gender, of our sex, or sex, and then we also get, because we're female, and then we also get oppressed in terms of what we get paid. So you get the gender pay inequality gap, and for some odd reason, Black women get, of course, there's a raging debate around the fact that white people get paid more than Black people, but within that debate, there is that Black women get paid less than everyone else. So the president was quite clear in terms of deliberate and special intervention for Black women. And I think that as part of the Women Empowerment Desk, we have a specific agenda, and we've got a dedicated support desk that speaks to the issues that women face. And not only just challenges, we also celebrate women. So a lot of times we'll have, and this talks to, the value of networking, that Black women then get exposed to other Black women who are accomplished, and we can have a sort of mentorship, mentor-mentee relationship. And then we also have the SMME desk, and we've noted, over the years, as all organizations evolve, that there's a huge segment of our members that have their own businesses, small businesses. So we then decided to establish an SMME desk that speaks to creating opportunities and initiatives around taking that agenda forward. And I mean, the only requirement there would be that you're a small business owner. And I know that the chair of the Eastern Cape, Mfundo Chekeche, has actually, and I think maybe Bheki Sibiya can talk to that, there's a program that is going to be run for SMEs. I think the second last slide just speaks to, and I think, Kulu, if you can just show everyone there where we have a footprint. And where we don't have a footprint, I mean, obviously, I think people must just kind of plug into whichever branch is closest to them. But I think we should have a footprint in every province. I mean, I know for a fact. In fact, Limpopo is not stated there, Kulu, but we do have an office there. The last thing that I want to talk to, and maybe I'll just wrap up with this one, and I'll try to keep it as short as I possibly can. For me, the mandate of the real core mandate, and if everything else I said was boring, then I think now's the time just to focus on the next 2 minutes to what I want to say. For me, the BMF is really about building a strong Black middle class. Because when we look at South Africa in particular and this widening gap of inequality, then we see how dangerous it becomes that we don't have a buffer or a healthy kind of Black middle class. And what's important about the Black middle class is that we must engage the media, that we are in charge of our own narratives, that we don't allow media to be driven in a specific direction because we are not advertisers. So I think the BMF and BMF members can play a pivotal role, and we can also agitate for more media owned by Black people. I know that, it was a very sad day when the announcement came that there wasn't going to be Drum Magazine and a whole lot of other magazines. And I think that we may, there's obviously now a digital age and a 4IR composition of how you do media nowadays. So I think there's, even for us as a BMF, we were a part of a magazine. And we have partnered with Sunday Times. We do the Empower Dix magazine when they do it, but that's once a year. So I think it's very important that the Black middle class engage in that space. And the reason why we should have a strong Black middle class, it's because Black middle class people have strong bonds of. So if you want to talk about poverty eradication, governments and business are not specifically going to eradicate poverty. What is going to and what may assist in the eradication of poverty is that if we have a strong Black middle class who has strong bonds of obligation to the poor, and as Black professionals, we know this better than anyone else. The narrative and the stories that we tell are often the same in terms of I was the first person to graduate in my family and have a degree. And so we see education breaks the cycle of poverty. And still today we have black tax. So we understand when family members WhatsApp us and ask us, for money for airtime, and we've got to pay medical aid for our parents, and we've got to pay school fees for extended family and our siblings. So that is why the Black middle class is so important, because I think as a strong Black middle class, we can definitely play a role in terms of that eradication of poverty and buffering the very rich from the very poor. And then second, the Black middle class is a product of the national project of Black economic empowerment. So that role should not be overseen. And we are also the beneficiaries of a lot of affirmative action appointments. And there's nothing shameful in that. It doesn't mean that you are less, we all study at the same universities. It doesn't mean you have a lesser degree, you can do the job less. In fact, we do know that because we're Black, and we know automatically that is a disadvantage, we have to operate at 130% as opposed to our white counterparts who only have to do it on 100%, if not less. And then also I think an important thing to talk about is that we should refrain from avoiding excesses and exaggerated displays of material success. I think it becomes almost vulgar when Black professionals, and this has been a criticism that Black professionals, they'll go to Cubana and they'll smoke cigars and they'll have, unpronounceable alcohol that costs more than what people earn in a month. So I think we must definitely guard against that kind of lifestyle. Not that you shouldn't be able to spend your money. And then I think I'm going to wrap up quickly. As the Black middle class, we must engage in socioeconomic issues, and really and truly speak to issues of Black Lives Matter, support each other, have Black unity, and not be divisive amongst each other. I think the bigger enemy is out there doing nothing because we are doing the work for them. So, Mpo, I think I want to close off there. I hope I've made the time that I was given. And that I haven't, gone over my time, and I've spoken to things that really, that people can take away and feel like this is an organization that they want to be part of, because I certainly feel like that about the BMF.
Great. Thank you, DP. DP, you talk about BMF being a Tsotsi in the board. I think, I mean, I've been in the BMF for over 10 years. I'm vain, so I'm not gonna tell you the exact number of years I've been a member of the BMF. But the one thing that is always a theme with all the leaders that I've certainly served under through the various portfolios that I've served in the BMF is that we say that the BMF leader or the BMF manager is a different kind of leader. You can tell them apart in the work. And I think it speaks to that fact that we call us tsotsis in the boardrooms. I mean, DP, maybe I'm just checking if there's questions. I haven't seen any questions, but I'm really excited. I see Nani from Free State and I see Mishak from Barberton. I had hoped to see somebody from Northern Cape, Kasia Kochaya, but maybe they didn't announce themselves. But I think the great thing with online platforms is that then we can extend this to everyone. But I remember, DP, I was at an airport lounge with some colleagues of mine, and I was doing BMF work. And they were like, what are you doing? I'm like, no, I need to make sure that before we get on the plane, I send off this document. And I was like, but why are you still in the BMF? So I know why I'm still in the BMF. Maybe if we get time, I'll share a bit why I'm still in the BMF for so many years. Maybe it's a question to pose to you. Why do you take time from your children or your child and from what you could be doing, other things that you could be doing, and just giving your time to the BMF? I think it's an important question, certainly for me, and certainly I think for people that are new to the BMF to really understand why we pour our hearts into this organization.
Yeah, I think, I mean, people often ask me, do I want to work for government? Do I want to be a politician? Am I getting BE deals? And I can categorically say no on all accounts. I've got my own law firm. I'm happy to run my own business. I can't see myself working for anyone, whether it be government or corporate. And I do what I do because I think I acknowledge my forebears. I acknowledge the people who have come before me, who have made it possible for me to be where I am today. So I think that I owe that to the people who came with the political martyrs, who didn't even live to see the liberation of South Africa, the end of democracy. So I think as a Black person, I owe that to my forebears. And then as a parent, as a mother of a young child, I think that it's important that if I don't do my duty as a Black person in South Africa to make South Africa look like South Africans, then I would be letting her down, because certainly, and I think we've seen this with Fees Must Fall, we have to take collective responsibility. So when the students were protesting about free education, I had to truly reflect and ask myself, well, was this a fight that they should have had? Was this not a fight that was meant to have been my fight, in the early 90s or the mid 1990s? In 1996, when I started university, should I have not made those demands for the, for the students that are now demanding free education? So I think, for me, it's an ideology. It's believing in, this Black consciousness of wanting a better South Africa for everyone. Because I think Bralot in his book says, and I consider that to be my handbook, to be my textbook on being a Black professional. And if anybody gets an opportunity, the book is called The BMF and I. And Bralot says in his book, South Africa is not only for everyone who lives in it, but it's for everyone who loves it. So if you love South Africa, then it becomes important for you to want to be part of the social compact of transformation. I mean, we can't be armchair activists and expect things to just happen, but we are not willing to do the work. So I think for me, I live and I breathe, and I can't imagine a life without BMF. It's just part of, it's just become part of who I am. It's become, I mean, if I can get as many people excited as I continue to be about the BMF, then even if it's just one other person, then I consider that a success, and I consider that something that will keep me wanting to be in this BMF.
Great, thanks, Adipi. I still see that they note a lot of questions, but I certainly choose to exercise my activism in the BMF mainly because I believe in the values of the BMF. And if you look at the strategic pillars that have been, I mean, since the beginning of the BMF: managerial leadership development, socioeconomic transformation, thought leadership. I mean, these are great pillars that we as the BMF have been anchored on, and we continue to showcase. I mean, the programs that you've mentioned speak to all of these pillars, and this is how we grow and capacitate Black people, certainly largely, and ensure, this is how we ensure that South Africa becomes to reflect economically the South Africa that we know and live and see when I go back home to Pampierstad. I think for us as BMF Gauteng, certainly, I mean, with the programs BMF I&I, which is really around pushing innovation and empowering entrepreneurs, and it's open for everyone, guys, for everyone nationally. Through the Midrand branch, we're pushing that to make sure that we've got entrepreneurs that are ready to hire people to create jobs. We've got work readiness with students coming through to make sure that the young people, I mean, we've got student chapter in almost all the universities, major universities in South Africa. They must be ready to take up the world of work. And it's not only about creating employees, really, it's about skilling people to be ready to either go into a corporate or create a sustainable enterprise. And we also continue to, you mentioned in your presentation that around the Employment Equity Act, our role in making sure that, I mean, in getting that enacted, and through the branches, we still see value in driving, in the value drivers. And with Tshwane branch driving management control, we've got Sandton, Ekurhuleni, Midrand with a twist of innovation and 4IR, as well as Soweto driving entrepreneurship, enterprise development. And I think I also want to mention just the critical part that Soweto branch is playing around just township economy, and just continuing to work with some of the chambers, business chambers, to try and grow the enterprises and make sure that township economy is really active and live. I mean, some of us, I mean, I come from Pampierstad. I don't even know if I can call it a township. I know the importance that's plays. And then we've got Johannesburg, the mother branch. This is where the BMF started. And this is where in Tate Lord may soul rest in peace, used to come and tell us that you need to excel, you need to, and just give us those values. And also, I think the appreciate the fact that the BMF leaders of past take time and they give back to the organization. And this is really how we continue to be sustainable and grow as a Black people. So I think if there are no questions, Pulwade, I don't see any questions on the chat.
Yeah, I see questions here. Do you want me to assist, Paul? There was a question from Ishmael Selo asking, I can't see head office for Limpopo. Angie is the chair for Limpopo, so we definitely have a national footprint or a branch and a provincial presence, as well as a branch presence in Limpopo. There is also a question from Refilo. Can I please have our Mpo's email address? So, Mpo, I don't know if you're willing to share your email address, but I think that perhaps to contact National and get that number so that whatever email addresses can be shared. And then there was a question.
I see Malcolm's questions here.
Okay. Can you
I
see
don't
the
know if you
questions
saw that.
now? And
I
then there's a
can,
hand,
yes, thanks,
and then there's a
DP.
hand to speak. So can you see them now? Then I'll
I
allow you.
see Malcolm's question, but I don't. Oh, I see the hand. Okay, let's take Malcolm's questions and I'll go to the hand. What's happened to the SMME desk initiative that would fund purchase orders for BMF members? Did you get that, DP?
Yeah, I heard that one, Paul. And like I said, I'm not heading the SMME desk. I'm not aware of that per se. But I mean, it's something that we can definitely get back to him on. If you take his details, we can ask the chair. I'm not sure if the chair is on the line. I see there's 111 participants. If Mfundo is there, then Chekeche, he can answer. I think, Paul, will this presentation be shared? I think that's a lot of questions around that.
Yes, DP, we will share. What we normally do is then send out an induction pack. So the induction pack will have a calendar of events. We'll have the provincial leadership so that the Gauteng membership can know who the leaders are. We'll also have the link to the website. And we ran a competition at our last event. We'll also just announce who the winners are. I see we've got at 18 minutes past 6, there was me, Masala, and I see the 2 hands that were there. So maybe let's just take me and then Kulu, then we can then I can then introduce Ndate Sibiya to talk. Kulu, do you want to play the video so long while we take Mimi? Okay, I think maybe let's move on because I see we are running a bit behind time. So I think for me it's really a great privilege to also introduce Ndate Sibiya. He's the current chairperson of BMFI, to come and share with us around what the BMFI is and what the short-term plans are around the BMFI and how members could participate. I mean, I really, really appreciate Ndate Sibiya. He's always available to come and help and share his wisdom and experience for us. Ndate Sibiya, welcome and thank you for joining.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you now, Ndate Sibiya. Seem to be having audio problems with Ndate Sibiya.
Is his mute not on, Paul? Wondering.
Ndate Sibiya, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can't you hear me?
We can now.
We can now.
Okay, so may I just indicate that there are 3 reasons. One, firstly, I have indicated that we're in the dark because the power is off. We have paid our electricity, but for some reasons, we are in the dark in the neighborhood. But then the three reasons why BMF Investments was formed. One was to generate sufficient cash so as to fund the activities of the mother body, namely Black Management Forum. So we are the ATM for BMF. Yes, in terms of the ATM, you can withdraw as much as there is money, and if money runs out, then you cannot withdraw anything. And therefore, for us, through the dividend payments, we are funding the activities of BMF. And I'm going to be covering the shareholding later on. Secondly, BMFI was formed so as to encourage BMF members to participate in broad-based Black economic empowerment, especially because at that time, which was more than 20 years ago, networks were far much more important than they are at the moment. And those members who were not networked, they had an opportunity through BMFI to be shareholders. And I'm going to get back to that issue later on through yourself, Chair. And thirdly, it was to use BMF Investments as a vehicle for transformation as a shareholder. Because in the companies where we are, then we are shareholders, then we can participate in the annual general meetings. Maybe we should be playing a role like Mr. Theo Botha does when he has one share. And for us, the more shares we have, the more voice that we need to have, and they play that role in the boards. But those are the three reasons why BMF Investments was formed. And then let me cover the issue of the shareholding, which I indicated that I would. There are broadly three shareholders of BMF Investments. Firstly, it is BMF itself, which is a 64% shareholder, and therefore it's an absolute majority shareholder in BMFI. Secondly, it is Sanlam Private Equity. Sanlam became aware of the formation of BMFI, and they were willing to acquire equity, the 30% equity as it were. And so, in a sense, they are the mother of the formation of BMF Investments. As you see the lighting, it is us using the cell phones to put some light to the subject, as it were. Thirdly, it is the individuals. There are about 287 individual members of family trusts or companies which are shareholders in BMF Investments. That's why BMF Investments is known as an unlisted public company because it has more than 200 shareholders. So it is 60%, 64% BMF, 30% Sanlam Private Equity, and 6% BMF individual members. Let me cover some of the notable investments which have been done by BMFI. And probably I need to just pause there and say, with the COVID-19 having done whatever it has done in reducing the value of the company, the value of BMFI at the moment is roughly between 400 million and 450 million rand. That is its net asset value. So it is significant, because then you start saying 64% of 400 million rand, that is the value in the hands of BMF. And the investments which we have done, the one we are most proud about is that we are the founding shareholders of Strategic Partners Group, SPG. And SPG is the catalyst which led to the Mbombela operating company, which operates the Gautrain, and a lot of other companies associated there too. BMF Investment is a 20% shareholder. It is the single biggest shareholder, even though SPG is a company which really has a lot of minority, but we are the biggest of the minorities. Some, when they are colloquial, they look at us being the tallest midget in the group of the SPGs. Other than that, we are the shareholder in Tsogo-san. Tsogo-san, for those who follow the developments in the shares and the splitting of the gambling area and the hotels, the share price has taken a tumble, but the previous managing director, namely Mr. Njabulo Mthembu, had facilitated that we enter into what we call a no-cost collar arrangement with Investec. And therefore, while the share price is low, we are not out of the money, we are in the money, but therefore it is the second biggest one. We are shareholders in Computershare, where we are a 26% shareholder, and it's a significant shareholding as well, and we have been shareholders for a long time. I would mention others very quickly, namely Advertech, and we have held Advertech shares for a long time. Raubex, which is a construction company, and we are shareholders in Nedbank, and again, we are proud of our shareholding, even though it's small. Then we are shareholders in two companies. One is Cable Tapes Africa. Cable Tapes Africa does the cables which are used by municipalities as they connect the big institutions and sometimes residential areas with electricity. That is a very interesting and important business where a 60% shareholder is the only company where we are a majority shareholder, Cable Tapes Africa. And it is still too early to call whether it was a great investment or not, but we are a 60% shareholder. Last one is Pembury Lifestyle Group. We invested 56 million rand in Pembury Lifestyle Group. Unfortunately, it was not a great investment because we have lost a lot of money from Pembury. However, having lost all of that, I still want to get back to say the net asset value of BMF investment is somewhere in the region of 400 to 450 million rand. May I then cover some of probably the notable developments which are happening within BMF investments. Sanlam has been keen on exiting its investment in the BMF investment, and the reason likely being there have been investors with us for more than 20 years. Normally, the private equity firms stay for about 7 to 10 years, and therefore they have overstayed generally their mandate because they looked at the company and say it is a strategic investment. Now they are in the process of offloading or selling their 30% equity, and there is a process in progress to deal with that, and the board is managing that. Other than that, the board of BMF has resolved to sell 13% of its 64% shareholding, so it remains at 51%. There is process in progress as well about that. The mandate which the directors of BMF have spoken to me about and the BMF investment board is to say when the BMF sells its equity, let it encourage as much as possible of the BMF members to acquire equity so that the BMF members move from being a 6% shareholder to at least being a 10% shareholders in BMF investments. We are going to be managing that process as we go along. We will go through the regional, or rather the provincial offices and the branches in order to ensure that that process is handled appropriately. May I probably indicate as well that for us, there is an offer which we have received for our Cable Tapes Africa business. We are entertaining it, even though it doesn't seem to be a very serious offer, but we are entertaining it for what it is worth. Through yourself, Provincial Chair, let me look at wrapping up and saying the reasons for the formation of BMF investments have been covered. The shareholders, I have indicated the shareholders. The net worth, I have indicated. But I think importantly for members is to say there is an opportunity to acquire shares. The mandate about us being an agent of transformation through shareholding, that mandate, in my view, we have endeavored to deliver on. However, I believe we can do justice to that process. And so that is where I believe we are. And maybe I should just pause and allow that questions or comments be given so that we make note. And if there are some questions which I cannot have an answer for, I'll undertake that one, we will note who asked a question, and secondly, we will make arrangements that we provide the comprehensive answer to the question has been provided. Thank you for the opportunity and the indulgence, Chairperson.
Great. Thank you, Bheki Sibiya. I think the members can attest to the fact that this is one of the first of its kind in terms of just getting the view of what the BMFI is about. Is there questions that I'm maybe missing some of the questions that what has motivated the decision to reduce ownership? I don't know if you've already covered it in your presentation, but there is a question from Sakunzi.
Maybe you can Chairperson, one at a time. What has motivated the BMF to reduce ownership? I am not quite qualified to answer that question, other than though to say the following. BMF in its own activities, it requires to have the war chest to ensure that it fights the battles that it wants to fight, and therefore it wants to reinforce the war chest in BMF by liquidating some of the shares in BMF investments. Secondly, the 51% was the original target when BMF investment was formed, to say BMF wants to be at the 51% area. But thirdly, because Sanlam Private Equity is selling, there was a feeling that if the sale is happening in tandem, it would be useful that we do that. Fourthly and lastly, to yourself, Chair, it is to say, let there be more shares available to BMF members so that they acquire equity and be the shareholders in their own right, in their individual right in the company which they own collectively through BMF.
Thank you, Babs. We see another question from Bheki Sibiya. Does BMF have influence in the management or running of the companies that it is shareholder?
I alluded to that. I would say yes to some companies. For instance, Cable Tapes Africa, where we are the majority shareholders, for us, we do have the influence. We decided to keep the founder as a CEO. However, we chair that board. Our Mr. Chama Kamukwamba chairs the audit committee, and therefore we drive the direction of that company. Secondly, Cable Tapes, or rather Computer Share, we have two non-executive directors who serve in that board. One of them is the deputy president of BMF, who, by being the non-executive director in BMFI, has been deployed to Computer Share, and she contributes throughout that board and therefore influences that. Three, in some other companies where we are significant shareholders, namely Pembury, we have the right to appoint the non-executive director to the board, comparable to SPG, which I spoke about. SPG, we have gone even to the extent that the president of BMF, who through BMF Investments has been appointed as a chief investment officer in order to grow the value of SPG, so that when the concession of the Gautrain comes to an end, whether it is in 2026 or thereabout, we'll find that whereas we started the business through Gautrain, we have diversified the investments to be in other areas, so that if we don't win the concession from 2027 onwards, SPG can continue to be a sustainably profitable company.
Thank you, Bheki Sibiya. There's questions that I see here that are not relating to the BMFI per se. DP, there's one question around how many members does the BMF have to date. I saw a question around just how the membership cycle. It's an annual membership. You renew on your anniversary. So if you join in June, your renewal will be due in June the following year. And I see Malcolm and I see the chairperson of Eastern Cape is engaging on the chat there. I don't know if there's any other questions we had. I don't see any more hands. I know we had Mamiki. We were not able to get her on. And then there's a question now from Yanga who's asking, what is the investment mandate of the BMFI? What is the process to engage the BMF for talks on other businesses? I think if we miss any questions, we will look at the chat again, and then we'll just, when we send out the induction pack, we'll also just respond on some of the questions. Tasneem, maybe you want to take the
investment mandate.
Yeah.
May I indicate that in terms of the investment mandate is we invest in all businesses which are not the sin investments, as it were, or sin companies. And so my understanding is we are not encouraged to do those businesses which are on the fringes, as it were. And I would like to leave it there. Investment strategy, we invest in companies which have been operating for at least 2 years, and therefore there is a track record because we look at the dividend flow to indicate the value of the company. Secondly, we strive to get the internal rate of return of 20% or higher, because then again we will be growing the value for the investors. For us, we are a long-term investors. Other than the 2 companies where we have invested for 1 year or 2 years, other companies where we invested, they are more than 10 years, and we have investments which are running as long as 20 years. That's an area we generally have been paying for our investments using our balance sheet fully. We are now moving into where we are balancing between debt and equity, where therefore we will raise a loan to finance the acquisition, but also we do our own equity. That is where we are. We are not quite a private equity firm as one would have, even though we have a bit of an arsenal of what we can do with the transaction. For us, though, we are looking at broad-based Black economic empowerment opportunities being what enables us to acquire what we have acquired. I hope I have addressed your question. If there is a follow-up at the insistence of the provincial chair, I will handle it appropriately.
Okay, great. I think there was a question around that just alluded to conduct of the members. We do have a code of conduct, which we're happy to share when we also share the pacts. And then DP, I'm 100% averse in terms of the on top of the numbers of GP, which is just around 400 members. National, I don't have a value that's up to date. So DP, I'm not sure if you've got a value there. Maybe if you do, please step in. And then there's just a note that is an indictment, and that is via I would want to I'm raising it here because I think as someone who's been a BMF president before and who is still strongly supportive of the BMF, this one is an indictment, and I think we need to just kill it right now. BMF has turned to be a tenderpreneurial platform that facilitates corruption and nepotism. This is not the BMF that I have seen and experienced. That is BM and DP. I don't know if you want to maybe comment on that.
Chairperson, thank you very much. I am not aware, nor have I been aware in the past, that BMFI, nor even BMF, has in any way participated in what is known as tenderpreneurship. The value which BMFI has built, it has been through broad-based Black economic empowerment. As I have indicated in the companies where we have been, we have really refrained from the tenders because of the challenges that the tenders present. However, the individual members of BMF who in their own individual capacity or in their companies, they get involved in tenders. I don't think we need to say that is an indictment on BMF or BMFI. Yes, if they are involved in that, the code of conduct, which Chairperson you have mentioned, would be applicable. But to then paint the company BMF Investment or the public benefit organization BMF with the tenderpreneur brush, I believe it is unfair, it is incorrect, and it is, in my view, not an appropriate thing to do.
Great. I see, Buntu, there's some interesting discussions happening between yourself and your other self. Kulu, perhaps if we can bring Buntu in so that we can hear what he has to say and we can ascertain who the right Buntu is. Kulu, are you able to put Buntu on? Okay. So it does not seem like we are winning with bringing in people who are on a line onto to come on to the platform. So we will deal that on offline, Ubuntu. And Zakes, I think we see your comment around Sibukeng, the VAL. I think as the leadership of the province, the PEC, certainly we'll engage you definitely and see how we can revive that branch. And then that is clear. There's interest in your presentation. I don't know if you've got slides, but I know certainly you have indicated that you are available to have more discussions with people who are interested. So like yes, I've seen your comment, and we can organize for Ndaris Beer to come and have another session with us, just specifically on BMFI. So I think that's it, guys.
May I just comment and say we will make the profile of BMF investments available to the members because I think it is the right thing to do. And secondly, we would make available the email to which those who may be interested in acquiring shares in BMF investments, because there are sellers and buyers which are going on all the time. Therefore, we are improving our over-the-counter sale and purchase of shares. And thirdly, we will be available to engage with the branches, to present to the branches BMF investments so that when the shares are then offered, people would have had enough time to deal with that. Lastly, our website, even though it may not be as modern as we want it to be, it carries information which is useful for current and potential shareholders in the BMF investment website.
There's another question from Malcolm, which I think that is where we'll take care when you do the road shows with the branches, but it's around the process of purchasing shares. But there's also an interest to know who the current BMF IMD is.
May I accept the invitation that we will do the roadshows appropriately? But currently we do not have the MD, and consequently the board requested me to be the chair and the acting MD. The reason we don't have an MD is because Mr. Ndabulo Mthembu resigned from the company and we accepted his resignation, but also because of the pending sale of 30% from Sanlam Private Equity and the 13% sale by BMF. The board felt it is appropriate that let's conclude that process because the buyers of the 13 plus 30 may potentially have the right to manage the company but certainly they need to make a contribution as to who the managing director as the company moves forward. So my role has been given is to say, let me act in this role to speed up the finalization of the sale of the 13 plus 30%, and thereafter I become non-executive at the discretion of the board.
Thanks. That is, there was one question I wanted us to do as the last question. I'm very cognizant that we've run over time. We ran from 5 to 6, but I think this one is really important if I can find it again. I think I want to reiterate that we will certainly go back to the chats and provide answers to some of the questions that we may have missed. Yanga's asking, what is the process to engage the BMFI for talks on other business? I think this one, I selected to just ask you, Ndadisbia, because as the BMF, we always, we're an organization run mostly by volunteers, and I get excited when I see somebody wanting to put their hand and give input and help move us forward. So please, if you may.
Chairperson, thank you. The process of engaging with BMFI at this stage, it would be to use my email address, which is in the website. If it is not available, then secretary@bmfi.co.za is the best engagement. And I would like to undertake that amongst Flo, who is our administrator and our executive PA, Thandokazi Kweyama, who is helping us in the office, and I will respond to all the correspondence. If, for instance, there is somebody who wants to do the transaction and they would like to partner with us, we would be willing to explore that transaction in the fullest extent of the word. For us, we really would love to engage with yourselves, partner with yourselves. However, I want to be clear, because sometimes we get approached as the funder. We are not the funders of everybody who comes to be with us. However, we are prepared to put the balance sheet of BMF Investments in order to ensure the transaction happens. However, at some stage, the sweat equity by whosoever wants to partner with ourselves is also encouraged. I thank you very much for the opportunity, and I would welcome more opportunities in the future to engage with you more thoroughly and even at branch level. Thank you.
My name is Bonang Mohali. I'm the chairman of the Bidvest Group Limited and chancellor of the University of the Free State. I joined the BMF on the 17th of April 1984 when I started working, because at that time there was no dedicated organization for black managers and aspirant managers. I joined it because it gave us a shoulder to cry on, to share experiences, to agitate and orchestrate for things that are in the best interest of black managers at that time during the height of apartheid. We helped the BMF to develop a new strategy, and that strategy rested on just two pillars. The first was the development of managerial leadership, primarily amongst black people. The second was this notion of socio-economic transformation. We wanted to position the BMF as the foremost thought leadership organization that can define, describe, and shape the type of future that we wanted. We were informed by an old African adage that simply says, if we do not think for ourselves, we place our future in the hands of others. In 1,001 little ways. First, this was my very first board position. I then demonstrated to my own company that I'm worthy of a board appointment. Secondly, by engaging, interacting, and interfacing with other like-minded Black people and learning that my trials and tribulations and frustrations, I'm not alone. And then lastly, I think by contributing to a broader body of knowledge. I was one of the first people who were trained to be champions of affirmative action, called affirmative action brokers. As a result, I genuinely believe that my career took off to the stratosphere. Simply because together we can do more. There are those things that on your own will take you inordinately long. But this thing called synergy is that together we can accomplish that which on my own was sometimes going to be impossible.
Thank you very much, Kolo. I think that was a great video. It seemed to be cut short, but I think it just goes to show in terms of why some of us continue to work for the BMF for free. I think we've heard a lot. There's opportunities to invest in the BMF. There's opportunities to give back in terms of your time to serve at a branch. And there's opportunity for you to grow. We've got programs that enrich, that grow you as an individual, certainly, but as a manager. And there's also an opportunity to engage with like-minded people, which is great. BMF is really a home. I mean, I've certainly found a new family in the BMF with the people that I meet. And with the networks that I create. I think with those words, then I think let's close. We're already almost 30 minutes over time. We really appreciate you having joined us. You could have spent time somewhere else. So thank you. Thank you, Bheki Sibiya, for coming through to share with us the knowledge around the BMFI, and certainly an opportunity for us to increase our wealth as individual members, long-term wealth. Thank you, Deputy President, for coming through to share on the role of the BMF and the relevance of the BMF. We really appreciate that, Iman. Thank you to Iman as well. Thank you to your family as well, that is Bia, for them giving you the permission to come and speak to us. I think for us, we will be sending you those packs that I mentioned earlier. And we do have a small survey that if you haven't already answered, please do answer. We want to know whether how we can improve, whether this was of value, and how we can do it next time. The next induction for BMF Gauteng is certainly will be late in the year. Know that there's AGMs coming up and there's the national conference coming up. So we are going to have it late in the year. Thank you to members of BMF, all of BMF, and to the friends of the BMF. Please do join the BMF. There's lots of value for you, but there's also lots of work to do in getting South Africa to be a better country. Thank you, DP. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Mpo.